welcome to the Art Block. My name is Derek and I will be your host once again. Now this week on the show we are going to be talking about Nepo babies. Now, nepotism, of course, the practice of favoring your own family in a professional setting. Now that's been around forever. The term Nepo baby wasn't really popularized until about 2022. If you remember seeing articles just absolutely everywhere. Any actor, actress that had a famous parent, they were asked, how did you feel about that term being applied to you? And I think of two very specific actors when I think of the whole discourse around the term Nepo baby. The first one I think of course, is Jamie Lee Curtis. You know, she is one of the most famous, most successful actresses of the past several decades, you know. She was born in 1958 to Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh, both massive movie stars of their era. Now, Tony Curtis was a son of Hungarian Jewish immigrants. Janet Leigh was descended from Danish immigrants. Now, they both came to Hollywood and became big stars. And then Jamie Lee Curtis was born into that family, and she had built-in connections already. She became a professional actor when she was just 19 years old. And when the whole discourse about Nepo babies came about, this is what she had to say. There's not a day in my professional life that goes by without my being reminded that I am the daughter of movie stars. And she said, the current conversation about Nepo babies is just designed to try to diminish and denigrate and hurt. Now, that isn't a lie. That is absolutely true. The term Nepo baby is a pejorative. It is an insult. To point at somebody and go, you're a Nepo baby, that is never intended, well. It's never intended to be a compliment or anything. That is inherently an insult. It is demeaning, and so nothing she really said was wrong, but I feel like that comment was kind of, defensive, and inherently feeling like she had to downplay the benefit she received from being the daughter of such famous people and having those built-in old Hollywood connections. Now, in contrast to that statement, I have the response from Allison Williams when she was asked about herself being a Nepo baby. Now, if you don't know who Allison Williams is, you should, because she is a great actress in my opinion. She starred on the HBO show Girls, which I was a big fan of. She was great on that show, and she was just brilliant in Get Out. She delivered a great performance. And her family connection is that she is the daughter of Brian Williams, who hosted NBC Nightly News for years. I grew up watching him every night at 5:30. And of course, he had a controversy where he was fired, got disgraced for lying about something on the news. And he later had an MSNBC show for a number of years. And then most recently did some election coverage for Amazon. Now, there is no denying that she has inherent connections in the media because of her father and how famous he was and how prominent he was within that industry. And her quote about this is fantastic. She said, all that people are looking for is an acknowledgement that it's not a level playing field. It's just unfair, period, end of story. And no one's working that hard to make it fair. And I'm going to come back to that. To not acknowledge that me getting started as an actress versus someone with zero connections isn't the same. It's ludicrous. Now, that to me is a perfect response to the matter. It is mature, it's thoughtful and empathetic, but it doesn't diminish her own talent as an artist and the great performances she's given and her value as an actress, but just acknowledging how much easier it was for her to become established versus somebody who didn't have a famous father who was able to open doors for her. And you look back on the show Girls, and that was obviously a big show at the time, and I love that show when I was a teenager in very early 20s, you know. And that show was really kind of Nepo Baby central before the term was really a thing. You know, Allison Williams, of course. Jemima Kirk was on the show. Her dad was Simon Kirk of the band Bad Company. Zasha Mamet, who is honestly my favorite actress on the show. Her dad is the legendary Pulitzer Prize winning playwright David Mamet, and her mom is Lindsay Krause, who is an actress. And Lena Dunham, the star, creator, director of the show, you could say she's a Nepo baby as well because her parents were both artists. One a painter and one was an art photographer. And you know, like I said, I love this show, but this was before I could kind of establish in my own mind what you might call class consciousness. Now, for me, all that really means is, you know, being aware of how different life is for people who are rich versus people who are working class or living in poverty. It's an entirely different world, and I don't think that's any more apparent than in the case of what we refer to as Nepo babies in that industry of becoming an artist, most often an actor. If you are not well connected and wealthy or well off, you know, that is something you are much it's much harder for you to pursue, knowing that you have to maintain a regular job and you have to pay the bills, and it's just harder for you to get into regardless. But the financial barrier is too much of a hurdle for most people, and I think that the area of nepotism now is much worse or more prevalent than it's ever been. You know, I do also wonder, however, is this a media manufactured problem? Is it even really a problem? Because inherently in my life, nepotism never really struck me as an issue. It never really bothered me. You know, I don't have kids, and I certainly don't plan on having kids. But if I did, if I had a kid who really wanted to break into the industry, and I was an established, well-known, respected, wealthy filmmaker or a writer, an actor, whatever it was, I would do anything to get them into the places they needed to be to set them up for success, and do anything to get them roles. There is nothing inherently wrong with that, to help your child kind of achieve their dreams artistically. And I'm going to focus right now on the Coppola family. Now, I have loved that whole family for years. Francis Ford Coppola is one of my biggest inspirations. A hero at one point, one of the greatest filmmakers ever. You know, I've cooled down on him a bit for various reasons, but especially with Apocalypse Now, that is one of the greatest films of all time. Incredibly inspiring. That story behind the making of it, going through all of that for the pursuit of art and the passion that it takes, just incredible. And it's crazy to look at that family and see how many of them are just incredibly talented. Roman Coppola has directed a couple films, but he's, I guess, mainly known or respected for his writing work with Wes Anderson. He co-wrote Moonrise Kingdom, which is one of my favorite films of all time, and I think it's undeniably Wes Anderson's best film. Gia Coppola, she is making waves this year for The Last Showgirl with Pamela Anderson. I haven't seen the film. Heard it's amazing, and her debut feature years ago, Palo Alto, I saw and thought it was great. And I think that Sofia Coppola is the best example of a Nepo baby there is. And I say best because she is not only a great artist in spite of her advantage as being a Nepo baby, her advantage from her family and her father, her being the daughter of Francis Ford Coppola made her the director she is. And of course, she has talent inherently, regardless of who her parents were. But being the daughter of Francis and traveling the world with him and seeing kind of the world through her father's eyes in a way, that greatly contributed to her art. There is nobody in film who is as observant or as detail oriented in her observation of people and life, as Sofia Coppola. My favorite film of hers is called Somewhere, and that film, if you don't know it, is about a famous movie star and his kind of estranged daughter, and he has to spend an extended period of time with her, and they're going throughout the world and different settings within the industry, and she's kind of like tagging along and bonding with him. And whether Sophia herself intended that to be autobiographical or not, I think it is clearly drawing from her own experiences in life of, you're a kid and your dad just happens to be one of the most famous directors ever, and you're kind of experiencing everything through him. And that experience of growing up with Francis as a father is in all of her films, and you can sense it, regardless of what the story may be. And in Priscilla, which if you haven't seen, absolutely see it. It is a perfect film in my opinion. It's grim and it's depressing, but it's absolutely terrific. She has utilized that experience of being a Nepo baby and made her art, I think, the best it could possibly be. And I think that's what separates her from every other Nepo baby in the world. She is as great as she is because of her family and the experience she had growing up around that. I also want to mention her whole reputation as a Nepo baby. Before that was even a major term, it goes back to the 90s when she was in The Godfather Part 3, and she received a lot of backlash for that, and Francis as well, because, why are you casting your daughter in this movie? And the story behind that is Winona Ryder was cast in that role, and she had to drop out suddenly, and so he replaced Winona Ryder with his daughter, and I personally don't see anything wrong with that at all. It wasn't his intention initially to cast her, but he made the best of it, and I don't think any artist would do really anything different in that situation. If you were close with your family and you needed an actor to fill the role, what better? And I think that, the Coppolas are a family of Nepo babies, but I think it's crazy how talented they all are. I think that family has incredible genetics. The art just flows through that entire family. Even Eleanor Coppola, she made a hell of a documentary with the Hearts of Darkness, how she was able to capture that insane, production of that film. Just everybody in that family is ridiculously talented in one way or another. And I think that there is a danger in writing people off because of their family or where they come from. Just because they're a Nepo baby doesn't mean they aren't 100% deserving of their opportunities, in spite of where they came from. And I want to mention Lily Rose Depp, because I'm honestly, personally, a huge fan of hers. I loved The Idol, the HBO series. I will defend that forever. I thought that was a fantastic show and did not get the reception it deserved, in my opinion. And Lily Rose Depp was a great part of that. She gave a great performance. The music in the show is great, not just because of The Weeknd, but because of her voice. World Class Sinner is a great song, in my opinion. That was in my top 5 songs of the year. It came out on Spotify. It's still on my on repeat playlist. There was so much great music in that show. And recently in Nosferatu, I was not crazy about that movie in general. Um, the cinematography was great, but I think her performance carried that movie. That movie stuck with me because of her performance. It was worth seeing just for, her performance alone. She said in interviews, kind of feeling pressure about uh, proving herself as an actress, knowing that her father happens to be one of the biggest movie stars ever. When I was a kid growing up, when Pirates of the Caribbean was at its like peak of popularity, he was the biggest star in the world, more so than Brad Pitt or Leonardo DiCaprio or anybody. Everybody loved Johnny Depp. Everybody was talking about him. He was the biggest star in the world, and so being in that shadow and having that name, can even be a disadvantage in that situation because people don't take you as seriously, you know. And she deserves a spot there, I think to another situation with the Nepo babies is I imagine in casting. And now, if anybody who is watching this has any experience of being a casting director or working for a casting agency, and I'm way off here, please let me know. But I kind of imagine if you're a director or a producer and say a movie star, you're a famous movie star, and they have a kid that wants to break into acting, and you're at a party with them, and they say, "Hey, listen, yeah, you got a new movie. I got a kid who really wants to break into the industry. They're great. I just talked to them. Will you talk to them?" And I imagine there's some sort of pressure on the director then to think, "Well, I got to take a meeting with them," or even an advantage personally of like I want to have some sort of relationship with this big movie star. I might as well throw them a role so that I can be in good with this celebrity movie star. Maybe I can get them in a movie later, and who doesn't want to be friends with a movie star? So I imagine that's kind of how it goes. I could be way wrong about that, but that's what I think. And of course, Nepo babies are nothing new in Hollywood. There are countless names out there who are massive stars, and they just happen to be the sons or daughters of another massive Hollywood name. Ben Stiller comes to mind. In my house, we love Ben Stiller. My wife is a huge Ben Stiller fan. At certain times, we've watched Zoolander like every day. Ben Stiller, obviously, he came from both parents were comedy icons. They were brilliant, but so is he. He is a brilliant comedic actor and a director. I think Severance is universally beloved at this point. I think everybody in the world acknowledges how great that show is. So he may have the advantage of being a Nepo baby, that just because of that fact, that doesn't mean he shouldn't be celebrated and loved for being a great movie maker. I think that you should not look at that as much. And I think having the Nepo baby terminology, I think having this whole idea of you have this advantage, so we're going to write off everything else that doesn't really matter. You are only there because of who your parents are. I think that is wrong. And there's just countless people throughout Hollywood that just happen to have celebrity parents, and that was always a thing, and nobody really cared until we had this kind of online discourse about who's a Nepo baby and what did they do to get where they are. So I think that is something to keep in mind. Also, marketing is a major factor in this, I believe. Nepo babies are good for marketing. It's another asset for a film, in my opinion, to have a child of a famous Hollywood name. Another asset to say, hey, this actor in the movie, it's actually the debut of Judd Apatow's daughter. She's in Euphoria. Dennis Quaid's son, Jack Quaid. He's in movies now. It's and I understand marketing from my point of view. As the artist, you're supposed to view kind of marketing as the adversary of art. And yes, of course, inherently it is, but also, I grew up like, I'd find a movie that was really obscure or weird or unknown in some way, and I'd want to get people to watch it. And so I'd find out what, oh, it has that guy from the show you like, and they're, oh, no, seriously, you like it. It's like that movie you like or whatever. So I understand if you love movies and you want people to see them, you need to really understand the marketing. And yeah, in my opinion, there's times where I go, oh, it's got the son of that guy. Okay, I want to see, you know, I want to see what his acting is like. And the Nepo baby thing seems so out of control right now. It's just absolutely everywhere. And I think that Hollywood's kind of becoming kind of closed off in a way. So it's harder to have that kind of true Hollywood story, going to LA and, being a waiter and going to auditions and finding your big break and things like that. That's harder to do. And somebody who's the son or daughter of a huge Hollywood name, they have a better shot at it. They have a better shot because they're more marketable. And even that's not enough. Apparently, Maya Hawke, who is the daughter of Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke, was saying that studios are now casting based on Instagram following. You don't have enough Instagram followers, you're kind of out of luck in a way. Obviously not a great way to cast a movie, but that is what kind of rules the conversation. There doesn't seem to be that pathway to stardom that was for like Brad Pitt, Jim Carrey, Tom Cruise, Demi Moore, all of these classic kind of Hollywood names that didn't come from connection. They didn't come from wealth, and yet they became the biggest stars, in the world. There's just very rare stories like that. I'll mention another one of my new favorite actors is Kaylee Spaney. She's from Springfield, Missouri, close to where I grew up. I grew up around that area, and she started in the Springfield Little Theater, and she is now obviously nominated for awards and being in some of the biggest movies around. And so to have a story like that and have somebody who's not a Nepo baby become this big household name, that is inspiring, and that's nice to see that there is a way to get to that place, where you don't have to be connected, and you can survive on talents alone, and that is simply what we need. We need it to be a meritocracy. We don't need to exclude people just because they don't have connections, or to exclude people because they happen to have privilege and connections where they could easily get into the industry. Now, I want to mention a couple examples here. If you remember Many Saints of Newark, which was the Sopranos prequel film that came out a few years ago, it was in that first year at HBO Max. They cast James Gandolfini's son in the role of Tony Soprano. Obviously, that's such an iconic role, and James Gandolfini is no longer with us. And he has the mannerisms down, obviously, looks a lot like him. So if you are a producer or an executive and you don't cast him in that role, you're stupid. Okay, that is an ideal marketing situation to go, hey, it's the guy's son. It's the guy's son. It looks just like him, And Smile 2, that was my absolute favorite film of last year. I think, it's a work of genius. It's a phenomenal movie. And they cast Jack Nicholson Jr. in it. And if you didn't know, the inspiration for the whole look of the smile they do in those movies was inspired by Jack Nicholson in The Shining, of course. So you get Jack Nicholson's son to be in the movie. That's really cool. And again, you would be stupid not to do that. You'd be stupid not to cast them, and that's not necessarily wrong to have, the son of a movie star in the role. And I think the discourse around Nepo babies is it does get overblown. Speaking of the Nepo babies everywhere. Maud Apatow. Uh, she is the daughter of Judd Apatow and Leslie Mann. She was in Euphoria, and there is a quote I'll put up here from Sydney Sweeney, who of course built her now massive fame on Euphoria, and talking about how hard it was for her to break into the industry, and people who are Nepo babies who get in there so easily, and how frustrating that can be. You know, and I want to go back to that Allison Williams quote. I underlined it here. No one's working that hard to make it fair. It is obviously very unfair, but the question here is, how do we make that fair? I really don't have the answer to that at all. I can't imagine how we could make it fair at this point. Is there any solution? Do you, like, what do you do? Do you have more auditions? Do you have a more extensive audition process? Do you give more attention to people who are, less privileged or less connected? Do you, turn a blind eye to a great actor because they happen to be Hollywood royalty in some way? I don't know what the solution is. I think it's gotten worse clearly because anytime you see a new show or a new movie, it's clearly, you recognize that last name. David Duchovny's daughter is getting roles. There's sons and daughters of everybody now is in something. There's just Nepo babies everywhere, and the entire cast of shows and movies are populated by them. And it seems way worse than it has ever been before. And what do you do? What do you do? I think for all of us as independent filmmakers, try to cast in a grassroots way. Find people who aren't in the industry, people who haven't broken in yet, and find more talent there. Where you have, actors who start in these kind of obscure independent films, and they get noticed and they can become, big stars. But as far as the Hollywood machine, like I mentioned with marketing, these producers and the executives, they know each other. They know these movie stars. They have dinner with each other. They have these relationships built over years and years. And so they are going to cast who they know, and somebody who's reliable, both in terms of marketing and in terms of a performance. Of course, it is very unfair. I want to mention too, outside of film, but North West. She is, of course, the daughter of Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. She is 11 years old and has 2 million monthly listeners on Spotify. She recently announced her debut album, Elementary School Dropout, which is, of course, a take on Kanye's classic album, College Dropout. Now, obviously, that would never happen to anybody who didn't happen to be, having two of the most famous people to ever walk the earth for parents. Okay, that would never happen. Similar to, Jaden Smith and Willow Smith having, those people as parents is just something that nobody else in the world, that's an advantage that nobody else has, or hardly can even, imagine having a mom or a dad that famous where you're suddenly in places like that where you can get a record deal, you can get the attention of other artists who worked hard to be where they are, and you just suddenly have access to them. That is an experience kind of that you or I can't really fathom, to be honest with you. But the hard thing about this is, a lot of the people we call Nepo babies really deserve it. I'm talking about, Sofia Coppola. I mentioned Lily Rose Depp, of course, the Ben Stiller. There's so many people with the connections in the industry who happen to just be really, really talented. And a lot of that I would assume is genetics. You know, if you're an artistic, talented person, you're probably going to pass that along to your children in some way, and they're going to have, an acting bug in a way, or they're going to have a need to express themselves artistically. And of course, there are some people, I guess, are referenced as nepo babies, but they refuse the help of their parents. They want to have a work ethic that doesn't have them relying on their parents. I mentioned Jack Quaid earlier. Refused help from his father when he started out. I recently saw an interview with Marlon Wayans where he was talking about having to prove himself, despite the fact that his brothers had become wildly successful in their industry as comedians, having to really work on his craft and prove himself and not ride on the coattails of his family. And that's great. That is great to have that kind of advantage, but still have that drive to, make it on your own as much as you can. That's great, but you have those connections, and connections are better than a name on its own. Sometimes a name will get you nothing. I will mention here, I lived and grew up in a town called Branson, Missouri. And my mother's maiden name was Branson. Okay, and that's because my great 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 uncle, his name Reuben Branson, he is the man who founded that town. Now, I grew up in poverty and obscurity. That didn't help me at all. I had no real connections there. I had just the name. But connections are what get you that advantage. And growing up in an industry like Sofia Coppola did, like Lily Rose Depp did, like Maud Apatow, like any of these people who are enjoying success right now in the industry, partly at least due to their family connections to the industry, that is an invaluable asset. That is something you can't really replicate, and of course that doesn't mean that they don't deserve to be there, but that is a massive difference between somebody that just comes from nothing and works hard to get where they are. And again, that Allison Williams quote, which was just again, like, note perfect, talking about how it's just not as fun to root for her when she is getting roles and winning awards and things like that. And again, I like her a lot as an actress. I think she's great, but she's right. It is much more fun, more rewarding to root for somebody who made it from nothing. And especially when it comes to being an artist, you have to kind of embrace the struggle. Whenever I see an artist of any kind, whether it's a musician or an actor or a filmmaker who had to struggle in some way, yes, it makes it more valuable in a way to see somebody who really had to tough it out, who came from poverty or had to overcome something to get where they are, versus somebody who just happened to be incredibly talented but also did not have to, struggle to achieve what they have. And that's the thing about this whole conversation, it's people have advantages in life that you don't. Whether you just happen to be born into wealth, whether they're just born in the right place at the right time, whatever that means, you have to accept the advantages that they have and also embrace your own disadvantages. Just because you did not come from a place where things were easy for you, that doesn't mean you won't achieve what you were meant to. That doesn't mean that going through that struggle won't be incredibly rewarding. In this moment, I was thinking of a line from a Big Sean freestyle where he says, "My favorite advantage is disadvantage. I get to execute everything I was planning." The the Nepo baby thing, it may be overblown, and I think it is more than anything. I think it is a symptom of the industry that is becoming more closed off in ways. It's becoming more of a struggle to break into it, but it isn't the fault of the children of these Hollywood royalty that get this Nepo baby label placed on them, and it's not the fault of the parents that use their connections to help out their children, but it's the system that needs to be more inclusive in a way. Not people focus a lot in Hollywood on inclusivity in terms of gender or race, but in terms of economic background, it needs to be easier for people to break into the industry. And how do you do that? How do you make it easier? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. But it needs to be a meritocracy always. I don't think that obviously everybody who's in the industry deserves to be there. There are quite a few people, in my opinion, that are simply there because of who their father is or who their mother is, and that can be infuriating to see somebody in all these movies and they're not especially talented, they're not giving especially good performances, but they're there, and simply because of a name or connections. So I just want to talk to you guys about that today. That was kind of on my mind, and it just seems to be an ever-growing, expanding, explosive issue. Thank you all for watching. Initially, when I started the show, I said it was going to be 15 minutes of me talking. This one's gone long, just like the others have. There's a lot more videos going to be on the channel, some movie reviews, some special videos that are not the art blocks. I'm going to be just focusing on other topics. If you like these videos, leave a comment, let me know, share it with your friends. Of course, subscribe, all of that. I really appreciate your time and listening to me talk about just everything in the art world. I am just incredibly passionate about this, and I appreciate every viewer, and it's just very fulfilling for me to get all my thoughts out and talk about this right here. So thank you so much. See you soon. Have a good week, guys. What a time to be alive.